All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. We're going to talk a little bit of Wheel of Time. We're about halfway through The Great Hunt now, and we're about to talk about the White Tower a little bit. So that is a well-worn book. But we get to Nyneave's testing for accepted. And there's not, it's a good chapter. There's good stuff that happens here. But mostly it's kind of more of what we've already talked about, which is Nynaeve's character and how annoyed we are that it was one of the many things they screwed up in the series. You get glimpses of it in the series. I thought the acting was fine. And, it was just the writing and the direction, because there were times where it was like, yep, that's Nynaeve, right? But just not enough.
Yeah, and you convinced me to come around on that one because I didn't think the acting was good, but then you pointed out you're supposed to kind of think she's a little bit bitchy and like, well, okay, so yes, they were successful then.
Yeah, and we talked about that in the Eye of the World too, of the way she starts out versus when she shows up in Bear Lawn, and you start to see a little more of, because when we first hear about her, it's reputation. It's everyone's a little bit scared of her, and she is kind of a queen bee, browbeat you to get her way. And we see some of that, but then we get to Bear Lawn, and she starts to, treat Rand more as an adult instead of a child under her care, and that evolves as we go, and we get a lot of that in the testing of why she's like she is, especially the first one, when we see her, because basically you're facing your fears here, right? You have to face your greatest fears or your greatest temptations, in order to be able to prove your worth of being raised to the shawl.
Not to solidify myself as the perv of our group here, but I hope they stick with the books and she gets naked. This is the time we start seeing all the nakedness in the White Tower.
So much nakedness. Yeah, I don't know how much of that is, Rob Jordan being a dirty old man, but there is a lot of symbolism to the nudity when he uses it, because it is. There's obviously the embarrassment for being naked, in the literal sense.
But there's also the purity of it.
Yep. So you've got on the one hand the purity of that naked as a babe, but then you have the, metaphorically naked of being being open and vulnerable. So there's definitely a lot of that. Where are my notes?
Why you never cross your arms doing a business deal, because you have crossing your arms shows you don't trust the person in front of you. Keeping your chest and your internal organs bare to the person in front of you is unconscious signal that you're open and honest with them, and you're expecting them to be open and honest with you.
So the first time is for what was, and what was Evansfield. Her life is a wisdom, and she has to leave that behind in the harshest kind of terms, of the abandoning her people as she sees it and says it when she exits that first test. The slightly more curious one to me, as far as kind of hinting at things, is page 343 is when it starts the second test, and it's the second time is for what is.
This is not, I remember the tests, but why did she channel again?
Oh, yeah, I got those mixed up.
Yeah.
That is curious.
Because But she said she channeled and Sheriam
Right. So
missed a
what
step.
is Emmons Field?
Mhm.
So now that is more curious. So the second test was Emmons Field where she had to leave them, and
Mhm.
I got mixed up. So what was
Was the maze? That's right.
it was the maze where I think it's Agenor shows up. Yes, I am Agenor, and she's running away from the Forsaken, and then she gets ticked off because she's naked and he's being lascivious and making kissy faces at her nakedness, and she gets pissed off, and that's when she starts to channel and starts to fight against him.
Mhm.
Which this one, so yeah, like I said, I got my notes mixed up. This one is interesting to me because um
Well, part of it is because it's a very recent past for her.
yes,
It's not some deep-seated uh, thing she grew up either dreading or dealing with in her own internal mind.
yeah, so when I was thinking of it as what is, it made a little more sense to me because she is now engaged in this fight
Mhm.
with the shadow, with the Forsaken.
Well, but
But
let's
having
look.
it be what was,
Well, it's almost touching on wasn't a big uh, conversation when Jordan was writing these, but it was becoming bigger, especially after the Gulf War. We've got some immediate PTSD here,
hmm,
where she's immediately traumatized by this experience, where she's out of her village and one of the biggest baddest baddies in the world, the history of the world, is attacking them.
and it was a major turning point for her because she had she had learned about her ability to channel, but I don't think she'd quite fully resolved to go to the White Tower,
Mhm.
because to a certain extent it wasn't necessary. She'd already learned not to kill herself with the power, so she'd already passed that threshold of danger.
Mhm.
She didn't necessarily need to go, but then she's faced with this, you know, nightmare terror of myth and legend that she has to run away from. And her character being what it is, that's going to piss her off. That
Mhm.
she has to run away. That she is weak and exposed, not just from someone who's evil, but from a skeevy man, no less.
Mhm. When I think the big test there wasn't the fear of Agenor, it was the emotion of having to leave the fight
Mm,
to get to the arch. Because remember, these things are playing against you, not to kill you in this dream world state, but to keep you from going back.
yeah,
So you get
that's a good
stuck
point.
in the loop. All of these tests
It,
are trying to get you stuck in the loop, not trying to hurt you themselves. Now, some of
so
them just come out, bubble up as deadly, but
all all of these are playing on her stubbornness. Now that you mention that,
mhm.
because she's going to want to stubbornly stick to it, solve this problem, win this fight. But the test is no, there is a greater good, there's a bigger picture, and you need
Well,
to keep that in mind.
little spoiler, semi spoiler alert. We talked about it in our series analysis. Rand at the end, the loop he was in was not to hurt him in that loop; it was to keep him in that loop. And we see it later in Egwene's accepted test, where they actually took Egwene's loop and put it
Yeah,
in Rand there. So the goal of this Turin Grail that they put you in is not to its ultimate goal is to keep you in there and give you a moment where you have to choose leaving over what's in there.
right.
And in the first one, it was anger. She wanted to hunt Agenor down because he got away, and she had to overcome that like you said, stubbornness, but stubbornness based on her anger.
And then the second one we already talked about was her people as she sees
Mm-hmm.
it and says it, and feeling like she's abandoned them, and to she kind of needs to embrace the idea that yes, but this fight is ultimately for them.
Mm-hmm. Well,
You are
and she's in a duality here because she abandoned her village, but she did it to not abandon villagers.
yeah,
especially the youthful ones.
So she's doing all this for Egwene most directly, but then also the boys, that she still wants to be able to help Rand, especially now having an idea at least of what he is. But then the real gut punch, and it's written so well that this scene is one of the reasons that I was so annoyed at how they portrayed Nyneave and Lan there at the end and that last couple of episodes, because this scene here is so emotionally impactful, so well written, and I just don't think you get that because, one, like everything else, they didn't take the time to set it up well enough, and two, they jumped right to the end. They destroyed the sexual tension by having them sleep together already. And it like a lot of the stuff that annoys us, like Leandrin is the only complete package. So she's acted very well, and she's actually written well. That's Leandrin, and maybe a little bit of someone else too, but we'll see. So she's written very well and acted very well. The acting in that scene with Nyneave and Lan, and the desire, the sexual tension there, that was great, but it should have ended with them walking away from each other.
Well, and I think some people confuse my position because I talk about the chemicals in the biological processes with sex, and we've had our polyamory debates and stuff. But that's actually the key. It's actually the reverse. I believe, I not believe, I know the exact nature of the power of sexuality. I mean, it's a cliche, but look at all the wars we fought over that sexual desire for somebody else. Think of the emotion of jealousy. How many normal people have ended up in jail because of a jealous moment? They would not have acted that way otherwise, but because of a jealous moment, they become homicidal. A complete flip of a switch, something they never would have done for any other reason. The power of sexuality is real. And especially if it's withheld for a while with someone you desire.
Yeah. And we talked about that.
They desire you.
We talked about within the Watchers chapter, where we get this from Lan's perspective of what that attraction to Nyneave is doing to him. And now we see it from her perspective here, of that strong pull, that strong desire that she wants to kind of fight against, because she is woman, hear her roar. She's strong, independent woman, and she actually is, unlike these other characters that are just fake and annoying. She actually is a strong character, a strong woman, and she doesn't want to. It's not that having a man then makes her weak. It's she doesn't like feeling that exposure, from the first test, her nakedness against Agenor.
Yelling in the background.
So she does. All right, where was I going with this before yelling children and dogs? Okay, right. So the parallel between Lan and Nyneave is it's not this modern day feminist idea of if she has a man at all, it means she's no longer a strong, independent woman. It's the idea of putting herself out there, of opening herself up to Lan. That's when she felt weak. That's when she felt most hurt. And you see that in the scene when they're camping at the end of the Eye of the World, and she goes to Lan. And then with Lan, when you get his backstory, you see that. So that the phrase comes up here in this book at the beginning, and it's used throughout and carries on through the series, that duty is heavier than a mountain, death is lighter than a feather, which is a tweak on a Japanese saying. It was something that was said by Japanese samurai, that duty is heavier than a mountain, death is lighter than a feather. And that's not just a saying for Lan. That is ingrained into his being.
Yeah.
That has been his life, his entire life. says so his first memories were going to be, and he talks about this a little bit, of those few surviving guardsmen. There were like 5 of them or something. Those few surviving guardsmen, they were his fathers. They raised him. And so as soon as he could walk and talk and remember, he has been training to be this king without a kingdom.
Well, and remember, we're also in a culture that believes heavily in fate. So if you believe heavily in fate and you're taught this from a very young age, you've just accepted at some point in your life that this is your life. And then something comes in and basically pulls your feet out from under you.
So Nyneave doesn't want that. It's a dual thing, because she is so confident to the point of overconfidence, and yet she's terrified at being rejected here, terrified that she's just a village girl and he's a king. He's obviously way out of her league, and she uses that as kind of a shield of, this is why you're rejecting me, even though it's not. It's that he cares about her too much, and he has this war that he can never win but never stop fighting. And so that's what gives you this tension of, they do desire each other, they do care for each other, but they also have these strong bonds that are keeping them apart. And now you have it here in this perfect idyllic scenario for her, and it is like, it is ripping at her. It's almost a physical wound when she has to tear herself away and throw herself back through the rings.
Well, another layer to this onion, though, too, with the world they're interjected in through these rings, is she is not Nyneave from the tower in this spot. She is starting to experience memories, and the person in the ring that is married to Lan and has the babies, and that person exists in this world, and she's basically riding in that body, so to speak. So she has the memories, she has the time with it. It's not just, oh, I'm here and I kind of want this, so I want to stay. It's, no, I am this. And this is everything I've ever wanted. And there's this thing that's kind of in the corner of my mind over there. That is completely different.
There's something more. There's something else. There's something I must do. And
which, I mean, it's very sadistic. Yes. But at the same time, that's why they are elite.
Yes.
That's why the White Tower is so special. It is not only just channelers, which are more special than normal people, but the best of the best mentally and physically of women in the whole entire continent.
You have to have such strong psychological conditioning to be able to withstand this, and also to be trusted with this power. That's something else that they talk about is, this was the power that literally broke the world. If you're going to be entrusted with this power, we have to know that you are solid.
I've heard stories of special forces, and I have no way of fact checking this, but where they would have to swim to a bottom of a pool and hold on to a bar, just with a grip. You weren't allowed to hook or anything, with an actual grip. So you're purposefully holding this thing till you pass out at the bottom of a pool. Then they fish you out, revive you, and you got to do it again 3 times. It's kind of like that. You have to physically hold on until you are just physically unable and you could die, and trust in your brothers to bring you out and be able to revive you. And that's what that kind of reminds me of. The mental, the mind fuck that is makes you elite.
I don't know about that, but Marcus Luttrell in his book Lone Survivor talks a lot about the training and how he got through it, and how he was, even though he didn't know exactly what he was doing, he was being mentally prepared, because there was this he grew up in a small town in Texas, and there was this older guy there who had been a Green Beret in Nam, and he went to him because I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read it, so I don't remember what it was about the SEAL specifically that made him want to join from an early age. But that was what he wanted. That was what he wanted more than anything else, like not even being an Aes Sedai. And he went to this older guy and said, "What do I need to do?" And this guy put them through. It wasn't just the physical training, but
It was like being a Spartan child.
he understood
Yeah.
later that it wasn't just about the physical training. The physical training was going to get you physically prepared, but more importantly than that, it was arduous to get you mentally prepared. Because as he put it, the people who made it through buds and made it through SEAL training were the people who went into it with the firm conviction that no matter what, they are not ringing that bell. They are not quitting.
Yeah, it's seal or die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
and I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but I did talk to someone who went through Ranger training, and he didn't make it all the way through because he had fallen and broken 3 ribs, but he wouldn't stop. He kept going through until one day he could not get up. They sleep deprive you and food deprive you in Ranger training, and he got a couple hours of sleep, and he was trying to get up, and the instructor stopped his squad who were helping him get through. His brothers there were helping him. That's the only way he was able to keep going. And he said, "No, if you can stand up on your own, you can keep going, but they can't help you up. If you can stand up on your own, you can keep going. Otherwise, you're out. You're medically done."
Really sucks because from a mental standpoint, that's the guy you want to get through.
Exactly. But he couldn't. He had been going for, I forget what he said, 3, 4, 5 days. He had been going like this, and finally he could not get up. And for anyone,
I don't know what the individual threat to his health was, but from a teamwork and mental state standpoint, not only is that the guy you want to get through, that's the team you want to get through.
Yes,
because they were keeping their brother up no matter what. And did he get a second chance or
no? He did, because he was as he put it, 30 was too old to go through one time. I didn't want to go through again, even older.
Well, I was 29 years old when I broke 3 ribs, and that was a hell of a recovery. It was like 6 weeks just for them to stay set in place, and then another recovery of about 6 months after that. That's what ended my MMA career, was that rib injury. Plus I ended up with a child on the way at that point, and I said, well, I'm not in the UFC anyways, so let's concentrate on school. But yeah, broken ribs is, I still count that as, I just popped my boobie, and I still count the broken ribs as the worst injury of my entire life. It was
well, speaking of the group to get you through, I do like, you start to see more of Sheriam here, and you get even more in the next book. And she is a really likable side character that is sympathetic, genuinely sympathetic when she needs to be, yet also firm because she knows what. Sheriam is the mom, and Sawan is the stern father, and you need that dynamic. And Sheriam definitely fills that role, and you see it here with Nyneave coming out. I hate you. I hate all Aes Sedai. Child, almost every woman who does this says much the same thing. It is no small thing to be made to face your fears. But there is a little wrinkle here of an extra bit to Nynaeve's testing, because remember, she comes out with a thorn in her palm that in order to feel that pain and get that anger that she needed to open up to the source. She wasn't even supposed to be able to channel. So you get a couple of things here. You get the weirdness of what this is in here, but then you get her raw power that the way back was almost closed, and she was somehow able to, in a place she's not supposed to be able to channel, not only channel, but channel enough of the power instinctively to open this gate back up and get back through. So you get a
Hold on,
ton from
I'm
Nyneave here.
answering Chuck real quick.
Yeah.
Do we want to just tack him on to this episode, or do we want to do a separate?
Let's do a separate.
Okay. Okay, so for those watching this, we are going to have a Witcher episode here in a second with the affable gentleman, and also a YouTuber. So check him out, subscribe to him as well, and okay.
And then we'll get back and finish up, because then chapter 24 is more tower stuff before it moves back to Rand, and you get Elaine and Gawain and Galad here.
Yeah, and this is really important because all of these people coming up, because you got the two strongest women in this entire world, Nyneave and Elaine, or excuse me, Nyneave and Egwene. Ultimately are the two strongest women. We have women that are already strong as we get introduced to them, but we get to see Nyneave and Egwene grow into that strength. And all of the characters coming up here are all integral into that. So we've got Nyneave and Egwene, there's Nyneave and Lan's interaction. Probably the two most stubborn people in this entire continent are those two. And I think that was the dynamic they needed, because if you're going to have a pair bond, it has to be the perfect match, right?
Yeah.
And especially in a world as vast and dynamic as what they're entering.
I wouldn't say perfect, because I think that's actually a lot of people's problems, because there is no perfection, but you need a strongly compatible map.
Equivalent. So you date up and you date across and up. And when you're the est, the strong est, the stubborn est, you need the others to be at least that in whatever quality is most important to you. So you date across and up. And if your value is education, well, y'all better be at least close to equivalent.
Yeah.
If your value is physical fitness, you better be training partners, right?
Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, of you cannot have a partner who you hold in contempt. And that is what weakness breeds. And these characters are not weak, and we're shown that instead of told that. And then we see them coming together, not just with romantic bonds, but friendship bonds with other characters who are not weak. And so together they become even more than the sum of their parts.
Well, let's bring up another one that I say is an underrated character, Elsa Grinwell. In any old village world, Rand and Elsa would have been fine. But because of what Rand becomes, Elsa, even though she had this little Twitter-pated kind of puppy love for him, is never going to be sufficient for him compared to who we end up, coming across. So there was that puppy love, and he actually felt a little bit of that attraction back in book one.
But it was more of the nostalgia for what might have been, what could have been, the simple life that he will always long for through the whole series.
But because he can't live that simple life, she will always be, you can't say anything against her because she's just, a normal village girl. It would be very arrogant to say, but you also can't have that equivalency.
That's a good tease to leave off, because we're going to see that very explicitly when Rand goes through the portal stones.
Well, Rand, I really want to talk Rand in this coming up. We're going to make Great Hunt very short, but you already started Dragon Reborn, which is the best.
I'm halfway through.
It's the best of the books, period.
Yeah, it's great.
I like book 4 as well, but 3 is hands down the best book in the whole series. From my opinion, but it's actually where we see the weakness of characters.
Yes,
because in the Great Hunt, I'm going to talk about Rand's development as a father figure, as a leader. Because remember, we had him taking care of Matt, and now we have him taking care of 3 people, and then we're going to see shortly him taking care of a group of people.
Yeah, 20 something. Yeah,
and then there's going to be something that happens later that his weakness kind of throws a little bit of that on its head, and then we see the failure in the beginning of book 4. We see how that weakness becomes ultimate failure in leadership. So I can't wait to get to that, because that's the best part of Rand, because he gets annoying.
Yep. Well, let's say we're going to pause here and we'll get back to it. Hopefully we can do some more recording after we talk Witcher with Chuck, the affable gentleman.
Okay, so if this is the end, like, subscribe. We didn't give any advice of any kind here other than keep reading these books because they're awesome.
We didn't even give any spoilers. Go us.
We didn't. Yeah, I gave a semi one. Yeah, just a little one, kind of like me. But yeah, we'll get back to it.
All right. So next up, chapter 24. We jump from Nyneave and her testing, and we jump to Egwene, who is just right into it, meeting Elaine. And so we get an interaction, we get a setup. They have a rapport, but it's not just an immediate, hey, we're gonna be besties. There is a little bit of tension and wariness there because Elaine is interested in Rand, and Egwene is obviously trying to hold stuff back. But then we reference other people who have met Rand, and again, this isn't just out of the blue. Yeah, it can veer more towards the Deus Ex Machina, but Jordan has established there is an in-world mechanism for coincidence, which is ta'veren, which is the pattern. And so we meet one of your favorite side characters of Elsa that is referenced here before they go off to meet Min. So we have all of them coming together here.
Well, I've always had a propensity for the little guy, and Elsa is like that for me. She's like the little character that pulls things together. It's like Bella. Everybody loves Bella, but nobody ever thinks about Elsa for some reason. So,
and then they meet Gawain and Galad, who are also, Gawain especially is intrigued by Rand because he met him firsthand. He had some time, some interaction, so he's kind of been sucked into this weaving of his ta'veren nature. So he's intrigued and curious. And then, Galad is pretty, so we have to talk about him for a while.
Well, but it is reflective of what we have in our own society. So Rand is also super tall. He's relatively good looking. He's relatively intelligent. He is relatively well spoken and polite. And so all of those things are going to be something that stands out in general. So even though you're a lord in training, as Galad and Gawain are, you're going to recognize those traits. Now, include a supernatural force where he is weaving the pattern around himself. And I think this is a kind of a parallel to what already happens in real life, where these people that have all of these traits tend to weave the world around themselves in general, because they're what gravitate other people towards them. He's a natural leader in stature, in genetics, but also in mentality. So
yeah, and we're about to see that actually in the next chapter as we get more into Rand's storyline on his own after having been separated from Huron, who's leading the hunt. And so there is kind of a duality there with Jordan saying, yes, it's fate, but it's not just fate. That's the excuse. But no, Rand is actually good at this. Right. But then before we get to there, we do, again, as we've mentioned before, Jordan's very good at teasing things. You get a little bit of a lie to here. Both her interaction with Elaine and Egwene, and then we kind of fade to black and she's interrogating Min off screen. So then, we have a little break there, and then it's Min's point of view of, damn you, Moraine, for getting me into this. And her, or as it says at page 366, Min's shirt clung to her when she finally left the bridge, not sweat from the sun, but from the heat of Elida's questions. She looked over her shoulder to make sure the Aes Sedai was not following her, but Elida was nowhere to be in sight. How did Elida know that Moraine had summoned her? Blah, 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 blah. The point being that she is a very determined woman in parallel to Moraine, but entirely different in personality. Her drive manifests in viciousness, right? And so we get a little hint of that here. That's then going to be developed further on down the road. But this tower stuff is certainly the secondary story to, the title of the book, The Great Hunt. So we get a little bit of that tease, and then we jump back to Rand as it gets to Carhein.
I had forgotten Min was brought back up here, which is important because, again, we talk about favorite characters going forward. Min is my favorite of the Tryst. But we'll go into that later because that really comes out in book 5, I think.
You start to see where it's going at the beginning of The Dragon Reborn, because she's there with Rand. And so you do start to get a good glimpse of where it's going, really at the very end of this book, because she's there at the very, very end, which we'll get to hopefully sooner rather than later. And so it's Jordan's kind of showing you that she's more, obviously because she has a special power, she's important, but now boom, here she pops up. She's with these other characters that for sure are more important and more connected to Rand and this main storyline. And here's Min, don't forget about her, right?
Yeah. Does she give her revelation yet at this point?
She does have a viewing.
Well, no, in her own thoughts about herself.
Not quite
because
yet,
Elaine is there. Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, she doesn't give the full explanation of what she saw with Rand, if that's what you're talking about.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So she gives a little bit of it because Egwene wants to know what she's seeing. And so she does give a little bit of that. Min's viewings are very interesting and very important. And I like how they're portrayed differently from the prophecies, from the dreams, from other things like that. And I do think it's interesting that they're the first kind of thing like that we see. So that foretelling, that foreshadowing comes from Min first off, really. And so that clues you into just how important she is and is going to be. And
it's kind of a great insight into the role of time. And again, we go back to our quantum theory concepts. And you said Jordan was a physicist by nature, and the role of time is integral into storytelling, and she transcends time to some degree.
Yeah.
Same as a dream world, same as realistically the creator itself in this dynamic. So it's kind of an intro to quantum physics again, with the portal stones, and then we got Min coming in, and I have a feeling that's why this is so popular, because it actually takes on this dynamic that most people don't understand.
Yeah. Well, when we get back to Carhein, there's a lot of action going on here. And we see
We kind of semi unofficially discussed this
Mhm.
a little bit.
And there's a lot of action going on. Um, and what is there anything you want to look at here? Um, I really think, to me, the most important part of Rand's journey, because that's what this storyline is about with Rand, is it's the hero's journey kind of tweaked and twisted. And as far as that goes, in Discord, I think is the name. Yeah, chapter 26, page 379 is where he meets Thom again.
Mhm.
And that's a big deal. Because those elements that we talked about in the Eye of the World when we left Thom, those come back, and then some. Those come back on steroids here when Rand has had a little more of the world. He has had his revelations at the Eye of the World. He has been told by Moraine and Siwan and Varen that he is the dragon. And now he wants to talk to someone he feels like he can trust and has a connection to. That mentor, that fatherly figure that Thom was trying to be before they got separated. And now there's a lot of depth that happens here when Rand goes back to him.
Which we lost in the series because you didn't see the depth of time.
Mhm.
And for those that follow what we just did with the affable gentleman, I calculated the distance they would have crossed in the 3 months later analogy, and it would have been the distance from sea to sea in the United States, which by the maps in Wheel of Time is not accurate, but especially since a lot of this they traveled by water.
Yeah.
But so the he did kind of take on we see a faster progression when you're in trauma, right? And they were together for a certain amount of time, and Thom was teaching him how to juggle, how to play the flute, how to he was teaching Matt the knives to some degree, and the game of houses without officially calling it the game of houses.
Yeah.
He was talking about Doman and his men and all of that. And so we got a progression of fatherliness that you're talking about. But also you've got somebody who saved your life.
Yeah.
In the face of what was considered the worst horror that you can officially face at that time. And so there's a degree of attachment that you can put on that.
So page 386, Rand asked Loyal to go give him and Thom some time, and Thom eyed Rand suspiciously as the door closed behind the Ogier. Rand hesitated. There were things he needed to know, things he was sure Thom knew. The Gleeman had once seemed to know a great deal about a surprising number of things, but he was not sure how to ask. And this is where he starts to attempt to be circumspect about the prophecies of the dragon. But of course, he's a country bumpkin who's just starting to figure out the world. And Thom is someone who has a great deal of worldly experience. So he just kind of looks at him and says, and this is going to add to Rand's stubbornness and confusion about who he is and what he is,
Mhm.
because I feel like the point of this conversation is he's looking for clarity from someone he can trust, because he knows that Moiraine and so on, and Varen, Moiraine especially, are trying to manipulate them. They are trying to push him in a particular direction. He wants clarity. He
But yet
wants
he still hasn't figured out Celine is, because he
exactly,
gets a hard on every time she walks around.
exactly, because endorphins are a bitch.
Yes.
Um, but he's not going to get clarity because Thom is too wise to give clarity where it's not warranted. And clarity is frankly seldom warranted because life is complicated. So he quotes some passages from the prophecy of the dragon and then kind of looks at Rand and goes, I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. And so Rand doesn't get the clarity he wants, and he's craving that guidance from someone he can trust, which is why he's trying to talk Thom into come with me, come with me, come with me. But Thom has the the physical and mental trauma, the physical scarring of what that Murdral did to him has created a break for him. I did what I could for these boys. They've made it on their own. They're able to stand on their own 2 feet now. So my work is done.
Well, you're also forgetting that Thom has a female at this point.
That too. Yeah.
So he is also in that state that causes that blind spot. So he normally in any normal situation would have helped the boys because they reminded him of Owen. But in this situation, he also has this initial love for this other person
Yeah.
that we don't get to see a whole lot of, but he has this love for her. And I
And you
think
can tell.
I think that's the answer to your question you brought up to me in private that we'll get to here in a few minutes. But he is torn between his fatherliness and his loins, I should say.
Well, it's more than that though, because and that's where I think
Well, it's the mental part of the loins.
yes,
Yeah.
it's that manly virtue of protecting, guiding, being a true companion for. It's not just that she's a lovely young woman, it's that she has true talent. And Thom
Mhm.
says that a Gleeman's life is no life for her. She's got talent. One day she's going to be a court bard. And so
Mhm.
he's going to help her achieve that.
Which is the internal justification
Mhm.
of his thoughts, because he's making her what he wants her to be, not what she actually is. She may still be that, but his thoughts on that are different than what she actually is.
Um, the next chapter is hide and seek through the foregate
Which
with the
is
trollocs, and I there
sorry, when I'm thinking of a love story in hide and seek, it goes down a different.
giggity. But he you do, so we go from Rand really craving, really thinking he needs this assistance, but then he's out in the streets in a a legitimately dangerous situation, and yet he takes charge. He does lead. He does make pretty good decisions, with especially with the limited knowledge he has, to get him and Loyal and then eventually Celine out of this situation. And then, Jordan, as usual, is kind of doing double duty here because we get to see Rand doing this, being heroic, being a leader. We get to see the kind of weird creepiness, weird creepy sexiness of Celine and what's going on with her. You know, we know there's something more going on here, and she just appears out of nowhere. But then he pulls a third rabbit out of his hat of, now let's also tease the illuminators and give you just a little tease of something that's going to pop up again down the road of who and what are these things, and what can they do.
Well, I don't think we can, unless you got a different way that I can think of, that we can talk about the illuminators too much without spoilers here.
Well, I don't think we have to say much beyond this is another faction, and this is clearly a mundane mechanical way of demonstrating immense power without using the one power.
Well, yeah, and this is what I talk about with the waves. This is the physical manifestation of things that are beyond what we normally would consider normal, that aren't considered the power. So we're deviating away from, you have the power, you're the ultimate X, versus there are different ways of navigating the world that can give you an advantage even amongst a world that has the power. And I think this is one of the best examples of it.
And we see it and we know it because we come from this world where you have at least a vague idea of the progression of fireworks and rockets to military applications in the ancient medieval world of gunpowder, fireworks and rockets. If you, I mean, for crying out loud, if you've seen, you know, the animated Mulan, then you have an idea of these things. But of course, Rand doesn't think of it in those terms because he has no reason to. Because
it's fantastical. They I think the point they bring up in this chapter is how secretive it is to make sure that you don't get the underlying basis.
Well, the Illuminators Guild kills trespassers. Is Loyal's trying to grab him and say, no, 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 no. And then after they've jumped over the wall, it's, I was trying to tell you, they don't take prisoners. That's how much they go. That's how closely they guard their secrets. But then,
which is funny because they were safer there than they were with the trollocs. So
right. So moving along here, it's all right. The next chapter is kind of an aside. And I think maybe we should end there because
there is
we
no
go back to the tower and things gets weird. Yeah. Exactly. It's seemingly an aside because not only do we go back to Huron, and it's from Perrin's point of view. So we're seeing what has been going on is they've been trying to catch up to Rand. So we get this from Perrin's point of view of Shadow Killer, the wolves, what the wolves call Rand when he went in there and he, you know, annihilated a dozen trollocs and stole the horn. And from their perspective, they don't know what that means. It's kind of scary, right? So you've already got that layer. And again, Jordan's building layers here. So you've already got that layer of Perrin trying to lead them, trying to catch up to Rand, but also not wanting anyone else but Huron to know. Wait, not Huron. Huron's the sniffer. Ugh.
Yeah. You mean Ingtar?
Ingtar. Not wanting anyone else to know how he's doing it, right? And then on top of that complication, the last time we saw them, Varen had shown up, and so he obviously wants to keep it from her. And now let's add another wrinkle to that, which is all of a sudden an Aiel shows up. Way outside of where he should be, and asking strange questions and talking curiously about what.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so Urian is talking cryptically, but Varen knows what he's saying to an extent. She
Mhm.
understands uh as much as we, the reader, should know more of what he's talking about because we've seen from all these different points of view. And we have all these bits of information that Ingtar doesn't get it, Perrin doesn't get it, because their frame of reference is more limited. Perrin and Matt think, oh crap, is he talking about Rand? Because they do know that, but then they don't know the other bits. You know, Varen knows the, hold on, wait a second, who are these wise ones? Because she, in her mind, is thinking they somehow use the power and we don't know about this and what, and she starts trying to query him about, you know, things that we reader know because we saw that scene with Moraine and Nyneave and Egwene talking about how one uses the power, what a wilder is, and what that can be. So Jordan is teasing us here with some more information about another group that he's referenced repeatedly, and now we actually see them.
Mhm. I'm trying to
So
think.
that,
Go ahead.
well, so 407 is where this scene starts. Oh, no, 408, because he let the words die as Uno joined him. Eilman in the rucks, the one-eyed man said quietly. So you get a demonstration of what has kind of been teased, which is that these people are incredible warriors. You know, they're Bedouin ninjas, basically.
Mhm.
As Uno says that he wanted me to see him or I wouldn't have seen him. And where there's one, there's got to be more. So we're getting the foundation of a lot of different elements that are going to come into play later when we see the Aiel in more detail starting in book 3.
Well, there's that part. So we know Jordan modeled them after both actually kind of a mixture of Native American tribes and Zulu warriors. So
We also have some Bedouin with their not just because of the desert nature, but then also some of their culture of like guest rights.
yeah.
That is something that is very uh, significant in Bedouin culture. Of you can be, you know, someone's worst enemy, but if you have given them guest right, then they are safe, right? And and
Mhm.
and there's a rigid point of honor and duty about that.
Yeah, and it becomes complicated with the IEL
Yes.
because there's a past that we're going to be privy of here in a little bit. But I think the two major points from this interaction is the stuff you brought up about how savvy they are in nature, but also Perrin's thoughts of that looks like Rand, or Matt's thoughts, one of the two. Matt's thoughts of they look like Rand, and
Yeah.
then they start putting that kind of connection together as well,
Yes.
which.
Because Urian talks about there, he's looking for he who comes with the dawn. And I was like,
Mhm.
what the heck are you talking about? And Perrin and Matt are kind of looking at each other sideways, going,
Mhm. So
So you have something bigger than what we've seen here, bigger
mhm,
than just the map that's in the front cover, because
mhm.
the Aiel are from the other, from across those mountains, and we don't see that map yet. So you're setting the stage for really cosmic stakes
Mhm.
in the storyline.
Well, you're also setting it with this kind of an interaction that is not warlike, but could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a little bit important because it shows humanity. these are the thems, right? So anybody in Ingtar and Uno put it forward that these are the people we fought during the Io War, and they're the thems, but at the same time they came to us in peace, so we'd left them in peace, and we had this interaction. But then we have the undertones of the interaction, which is Rand's likeness. We get a little bit of prophecy from Uriel, and we get the plain fact that they interacted in peace when normally they would be enemies at this point, which everybody alive in this scenario only knows them as enemy.
Yeah.
So yeah, on both sides. So it's kind of a three-way interaction that
it's one of the things that is used at a couple of different points, both in the Eye of the World and here, to reevaluate the Tinkers, the traveling people, that they are allowed to cross the waste. And so there's an element of courage that they must have there to be able to cross the waste, but then also they're one of the very few people that the Aiel will allow to cross the waste. So we know they're very reclusive, very xenophobic, and yet here you have one stepping out, exposing himself, and engaging with these foreigners because whatever it is that he's doing here is that important.
Well, not only that, but to Uno's words, he knew he had backup.
Yes.
But
but then you also get that fatalistic bit where he there's because there are kind of 2 points where Urian says, we can dance if you want to, safety dance, even not so safe, that he'll dance with the Shinarans if they want to, but that's not why he stepped out. But then he does it again with Varen when he can't answer her questions and he thinks he's about to be smote with the power that she has, and bring your lightnings and I will dance with them. And he knows he's going to die, but he's going to do it anyway. And he's fully expecting that that's what's about to happen.
Very good point. Very good point. Did we want to end with that chapter?
Yeah, let's end there because the next chapter is Sanchin. And so that's a lot of meat and potatoes there with both them and with oh, no, not yet. This is Bornhold and Doman. It's them encountering the Sanchin.
Okay.
So I don't have a ton to say about this chapter before it then gets right back into the meat of the story with Huron and Rand and Loyal and their encounters in Carhein, and then they finally meet up and all that. But I will say that this is one of my favorite final lines that I've ever read, which is page 432, the very end of this chapter. Doman took a deep breath and set about trying to lie his way out of Thom. I love that. It's a great bit of writing, but it's doubly so because it's such a great bit of Bail Doman's character. Right.
Let me read that chapter again because I love Bornhold.
Yes.
The elder Bornhold.
And we talked about him when we first met him, that he's purposefully in stark contrast with Child Buyer, who is a rigid zealot, whereas Bornhold is a true believer, but also a true humanitarian.
And I think his motives going into the end of this book are integral in how it plays out and how things go forward with his son and everything.
Yes.
So let me reread that chapter before the next time. because we're also, I think, introduced to Valda there as well, if I'm not mistaken.
They reference Eamon Valda, I think.
Wasn't he part of the group that is interrogating people in the towns?
Carradine is the questioner who Bornhold has to obey.
Carradine is also important as well. So I knew it was one of those.
And we don't see him, but they reference him because Bornhold is supposed to be following the questioner's orders, and he doesn't.
So whether it's Valda or Carradine, it's important either way. So let me reread that part, and we'll start there next time.
Well, we'll get more in depth there, and then hopefully we should be able to get through the next big chunk of Rand's storyline, which takes us nearly to the climax of the book.
Giggity. Sorry, we said 3 or 4, but we're going about like 6 or 7. But I forgot how much meat there was.
Yeah, especially as you get into about the middle of the book, when you get past that kind of big opening chunk, that's kind of the prologue, the setting up of the hunt. There's, you can kind of breeze through that because that's a lot of setup, a lot of action. But then you really get into a lot of meat of different characters, motivations, and things that are being set up for down the road.
Well, and that's why I think it falls to the wayside, is because there's not a lot of action. It's really mostly set up. Book 2 is mostly set up. A shit ton of action in the last couple chapters, realistically.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even that set up for the best book of them all, which is book 3. So it's really easy to kind of forget it, but at the same time, you need it. It's like all the work you did to get on stage for your bodybuilding competition. All you think about is the poses, but at the same time, it was the hours and hours and hours and hours of weeks and weeks and weeks that you spent building those micro nano meters of muscle mass all along the way that made the difference. And that's what the Great Hunt is.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll pick up with chapter 29 and see how far we can get towards the end of the book next time.
Hopefully all the way through it. We're getting damn close. And even the climax, I think even those climaxes are easier to sum up than the build-up stuff. The build-up stuff takes a lot more philosophical.
Because the climax works because he's laid the groundwork. Not to get too far into it, but especially with the girls, what he sets up with them in the White Tower is how they are able to get through the climax. Hello, friends. All right. We'll talk about things beyond pillow friends next time.
All right, everyone. Like, subscribe. No advice given for medical information. We'll see you later.